Hey guys, so here is another video about writing equations of lines. So when I made your lesson 13 video, everything on that video is correct. And it will help you get the answers in Math Excel. It'll be fine. It's still correct information and it's still good math. Okay. But when I was doing the video, I really had my mind, like in Algebra 1 terms, because that's what I've taught for so long, and it's been a while since I've done Algebra 2. So, we put a lot of focus on slope-intercept form in Algebra 1, and that's what you did in middle school too, and then you used it quite a bit in geometry as well, that y equals mx plus b. But in Algebra 2, and then for those of you that are planning to go to like pre-cal and calculus, slope-intercept form isn't always the most helpful. So we're going to take another look at writing equations of lines. I'm going to show you an alternate method that may make things a little bit easier, okay? And now that Coach Philpott showed me how to do it and talked me through it, I think that it is easier. So stick with me. I'll try to make this video as quick and painless as possible. So when we're writing equations of lines, we only need two things. You need the slope and any point on the line. It doesn't matter if it's the y-intercept or the x-intercept or just any other point. We can use it and the slope to make an equation. Okay, the first form we have is slope-intercept form. We've put a lot of emphasis on this in the past. You've used it a lot. You know it. You've got it. But the slope-intercept form, it's really great for graphing because it gives you the y-intercept and the slope. That's excellent. Super, super helpful for graphing. Super easy to graph in the calculator. It's not super useful for writing equations unless your numbers are pretty. If you've got a bunch of fractions, then this one isn't as friendly. Okay, the next form is standard form. It's your ax plus by equals c. If the numbers are pretty, the standard form is really helpful to find your x and y intercepts on the graph or to graph. We do have the little trick, cover up x to find y, cover up y to find x. And if your numbers are really pretty, that works out really, really well. It's also pretty easy to change this to slope-intercept form. But again, this is not super helpful when writing equations. Okay, the next one is point slope form. It's y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. Now, another way to write this, which is usually easier to remember, at least Coach Philpott tells me that most students remember this other version of it better. So if we have y equals m times the quantity x minus x1 and then add y1. Okay, both of those are equivalent statements. The only thing is we just took that y1 and put it on the other side. So this one actually looks a little bit more like our slope-intercept form that we're used to. We have y equals the slope, and then this is a little bit different. It's still got our x, but we're going to have another value in there, and then plus y1, so plus that y value on the end. Okay? So you can make a little note. This looks similar to y equals mx plus b. Okay? Hey, this is the most useful form. Learn it. Remember it. We've got to get a grip on it because later when we look at other types of lines, and even in lesson 15 when we start looking at absolute value, we're going to kind of refer back to a form that looks very similar to this. This is also going to help us when we get into transformations and all that with the graphs, the moving it up, down, left, right. It's really going to help us. Okay, so learn the point slope form. You can learn it either way, whatever works for you. Personally, now that I've looked at it and worked with it a little bit, I like this version just because I am so used to y equals mx plus b. This is close to that. So I like this version best. Now, the next thing we're going to do is practice writing some equations. So, very similar work to what we did in video 3, in lesson 3, and I think we might have done some in lesson 12. I can't remember. It's all running together at this point. But we're going to look at 2 points. We're going to use those 2 points to make an equation of a line. We're going to use the point-slope form. I'm going to show you how to easily turn it into slope-intercept form if you need to. Then we're going to look at parallel and perpendicular lines and making those equations, because I think you might find this way a bit easier than what we did originally in video 13. Okay, so here are 2 points. Write an equation from those 2 points. Now, we said we only need 2 things to make an equation. We need the slope and a point. We've already got the points taken care of. We just need the slope. So we're going to use our slope formula. So that y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to say 9 minus 3 over 5 minus 2. It gives me 6 over 3, which simplifies to 2. So now I'm going to use this point-slope form. So y equals m times the quantity x minus x1 plus y1. So I know my slope is 2, so y equals 2. Now, choose a point. It doesn't matter which one you use. Either one. I'm going to use the one with smaller numbers just because I like it. So I'm going to leave x in there and minus x1. So my x1 is 2. Okay? And then plus, what's the y that goes with the 2? Is 3. Now, I want you to notice the minus is part of the formula. So that means the opposite of x1. So the opposite of positive 2 is negative 2. You can't trust an x. Okay, that's a fun little saying. You can never trust an x. So when it's on the inside of the parentheses with the x, no, it's the opposite of what it appears. You can't trust it. It's not exactly how it appears. All right, so this is an equation of the line. If there are no specifications onto what form you have your answer in, this is perfectly fine. Leave it like this. No problem. Now, in Math Excel, it might say slope-intercept form or point-slope form. It's going to be a little more particular. But just in general, this is an equation of the line that goes through those 2 points. Now, if you need it in point-slope form, if this doesn't work, you can take this 3 and put it to the other side, so it would just be y minus 3. If you want to change it to point or slope-intercept form, it's really easy. We're just going to, we'll make a little note, distribute and combine. So if I distribute, I'm going to have y equals 2x minus 4 plus 3. Combine, I guess I should add like terms. So it's y equals 2x minus 1. And so that is the slope-intercept form. Okay, same equations, equivalent equations. This is point-slope. This is slope-intercept. So now, even though we had to do a little bit of work to get it to slope-intercept form, some of you might still find that easier than plugging in slope and a point, finding b, and making a new equation. I know that I feel like this is much easier. Okay, so you might feel the same way. Okay, here's example number 2. We have -1, 0, and 1, -8. Take just a second, find m, and then plug it into that slope-intercept, or that, point-slope form. Sorry, all the forms are getting mixed up. So take that, put it in that point-slope form, and make an equation of the line. So give it a try. Okay, let's check it. So -8 minus 0, 1 minus a -1, so that's -8 over 2, which gives me a -4. Okay, so now I'm going to plug it back into my point-slope form. So y equals our slope is -4. In parentheses, x, you can choose either one of these. I'm going to use this one because that 0 just makes things a little easier. So we have x and the opposite of the x value. Remember, you can't trust an x. So it's not a -1, it's going to be a +1. And then plus 0 We know 0 means nothing, so you can mark that out and have this as your final answer. If you need to go to slope-intercept form, you can distribute and get y equals negative 4x minus 4. Okay? Those are equivalent statements. Either one of those works. All right, number 3. Try one more on your own. Just see what you can do. -2, 1, and 0, 6. Give that one a try. Okay, let's check it. So for m, 6 minus 1, and then 0 plus 2, or minus a -2. So that gives us 5 halves. So y equals, our slope is 5 halves. And then parentheses x, pick one of these. You can use either one you want to. I'm going to use 0 just to show you how it works. X minus 0 and then plus 6. All right, we know, if you leave it like that, I wouldn't necessarily count off. Just know that you're not going to see that 0 in there. Usually we know if we subtract 0, nothing happens. So that's just y equals 5 halves x plus 6. And there, it's already in your slope-intercept form. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at are writing equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. Now, I think that you'll find this easier using the point slope form than it was when we used slope-intercept in video 13. But it might not be. You might think the other way is easier, so you can use whichever one you prefer, but I do want you to see how this works. Okay, so parallel. Parallel means we have the same slope. So if we're given this equation, then our slope, the slope we want is 2/5 because it's the same, and we need it to go through this point. So when we're using slope-intercept form, we plug this in, the point, solve for b, made a new equation. So watch how easy it is this time. So we're going to do y equals our slope, parentheses, x minus our x value, close parentheses, plus 8. So there's an equation. If your work or your question doesn't specify what form, you can stop there. And then again, if you need slope-intercept form, you can simplify. So y equals 2/5 x, and then 2/5 times 5, -5 is -2, plus 8. That gives us y equals 2/5 x plus 6. Okay, so there's the slope-intercept form if you need it. Okay, here's our next one. Parallel to y equals 3 and through the point 510. So y equals 3, if you think about that, we don't have a slope. This x is missing, so that means our m is 0. Okay, we've got our point. So y equals 0 times the quantity x minus your x value, then close quantity plus your y. 0 times all that cancels out, and you're left with y equals 10. And so that works. That's your equation. That's also what it would look like in point slope form, slope-intercept form. You're done. Okay, here's another one, except this time we're going to do perpendicular. So perpendicular means we need opposite reciprocal slopes. So instead of 3/4, we're going to have -4/3. All right, we've got our point. So y equals -4/3 times x minus the x value, so it's the opposite of -2, which is +2, and then add your y value out on the end. Now, if you need it in slope-intercept form, you can distribute, combine like terms. Now, you do have some fractions there, so, a calculator would probably be handy there, but not required. And again, if it just says write an equation, you can leave it like this. You don't have to simplify. But no, Math Excel is kind of picky, and it is going to ask for specific forms on some of them. But generally, in the future, that'll do just fine. Okay, here's a different one. Perpendicular to y equals 3 and through 510, through the point 510. So we know that the slope for this is 0. So what's the opposite of a 0 slope? Undefined. So if m is undefined, do you think we can write y equals undefined parentheses x minus 5 plus 10? No, that doesn't make any sense. We can't do that. So if it's undefined, you just can't do it, okay? So you can write undefined if you want to. Okay, here's the last example we're going to look at. So we want an equation of a line that's perpendicular to this and through -6, -4. So this one, we're given in standard form, and we need to find the slope. So the easiest way to find the slope here will be to put it in slope-intercept form. So we'll subtract 2x of 3y equals -2x plus 8. We'll divide everything by 3 so that y equals -2/3 x plus 8/3. Now, that 8/3 doesn't matter. All we need is the slope. So if our slope there is -2/3, what is the perpendicular slope? +3/2. So that's what we're going to use. So y equals 3/2 times the quantity x, the opposite of our x value. You can't trust an x. So plus 6, and then add your y value on the end. So it's a -4, so we're going to do -4. And that is your equation of a line. You can simplify and get it in point slope form. So that would be y equals 3/2 x, and then 3/2 times 6. 3 times 6 is 18, divided by 2 is 9. So plus 9 minus 4, so y equals 3/2 x plus 5. Okay, but again, that's not necessary when it just asks you for a line. If it says slope-intercept form, make sure you do simplify it. But you guys know how to distribute and combine like terms, so that shouldn't be that big of a deal. Now, I know this is different and it's a little bit extra to what we were doing, but I hope it helps. I hope some of you think it's easier. But no, we will be using point slope form more going forward.